So, another year down. And though we were largely inactive, that didn't stop the Dubious consumers from consuming tons of media. In fact, you might even say that's the problem. When it comes to these year-end lists, I like to look at them a little bit differently. I list what movies I saw this year, regardless of when they came out, which means there might be movies from the early 1900s on one end that caught my eye, or as recent as December 31st. Don't worry, The Bandersnatch did not make this list, though it very easily could have. Before we get started, I wanted to thank my patrons Chris Marketson, Jeff Strait, Stormy OK. Without you guys, we wouldn't be here, and even though we've been largely inactive, it has definitely helped me keep my eye on the ball and wanting to return. Thank you so very much. If you want to support us, make sure you check out our Patreon at patreon.com/JustinDHeard. Even $1 per video would drastically improve both our lives and the quality of the show. So thank you so much. Now that that's out of the way, in no particular order this year, here are 10 films that I saw in 2018 that I absolutely loved. My name is Justin D. Heard, and this is Dubious Consumption. The House That Jack Built, 2018.
Your house is a fine little house, Jack.
Are you allowed to speak along the way? I was thinking there might be rules.
Let me put it this way. Don't believe you're going to tell me something I haven't heard before.
Man, I have been looking forward to The House That Jack Built since I first heard of it, much less whenever I first saw the trailer back in May. I absolutely love Matt Dillon as an actor, especially since he appeared in one of my favorite adaptations, Factotum. And here we are, a Lars von Trier film about a serial killer and the odd situations he finds himself in. Perfect fodder for me. But the absolute truth here is that I went into this as my first Lars von Trier film. You know, I know plenty of other stuff like Antichrist and Nymphomaniac, and he has a reputation. Despite Nate One Neutron's best guess, turns out this movie was perfect for me. First of all, this movie is hilarious. This comes from the awkwardness of the main character and how he interacts with people who don't know he's a killer and how obviously bad at it he is. Whether it's the random stranger he picks up on the side of the road that just continues to push him at every turn and deride him until he lashes out, to the woman he tries to convince that he's law enforcement, fails spectacularly at it, and then switches it to be an insurance adjuster and how he can double her rates, and oh, okay, come on inside. Almost every section has its own inherent comedy to it, whether it's cringeworthy, whether it's sadistic, or just straight up, what the hell just happened? I'm still divided on the last act of the film, where we learn the context of the framing device and the audio that we've kind of been hearing throughout, and then we get to see how that journey plays out. For me, it takes away from the insanity we've seen, but it also gives it a greater scope to the story that as a whole, though personally I'd prefer the film without it. I know Nate One Neutron thought that it completely recontextualized it.
When I think about all the things I've done in my life without in any way resulting in punishment.
Now I have to say, my next pick is on the other side of the spectrum. I mean, it's not like we're going to see our favorite British bear dragging a corpse across town only to be saved by a deluge at the last second. But then again, he does end up in prison. Paddington 2, 2018. I have to thank Patrick H. Willems for this. I definitely would not have searched out this movie without him, much less fall in love with it. This, like another film on the list, is one where I saw both entries this year. In the case of Paddington 2, I fell in love with the latter of the two. Just about everything that made the first movie great is just amplified here. The character arcs continue to delight, and I find Hugh Grant as the villain so much better than Nicole Kidman's turn in the first, though admittedly she was having the best time of her life playing that. Honestly, I can't add anything to this that Patrick hasn't already done it, so make sure you check out his video if you haven't. Also, you'll have an irresistible craving for marmalade afterward, especially if you haven't seen the first.
Come on, Wolfie.
Ow. Annihilation, 2018.
Can you describe its form?
No.
For those that have heard negative opinions about this, watch the film. You owe it to yourself. Annihilation is written and directed by Alex Garland, the writer of, wait for it, 28 Days Later, Sunshine, Dread, Ex Machina, and even video games such as Enslaved, Odyssey to the West, and the Devil May Cry reboot. He's a master of his craft, heady sci-fi that causes you to question your core beliefs, and this is no exception. Based off the Southern Reach trilogy's first book, Annihilation, Alex instead takes the ideas of it and spins it out into a dream that twists itself fully into a nightmare about halfway through. Shocking, I know. It follows a group of scientists as they enter the Shimmer in an effort to find out the reason and methodology behind this extraterrestrial event. This is a beautifully twisting story with an inescapable Cronenberg flavor to it that's threaded through with the grace of a master. The only thing that I can say negative about this is that I keep confusing Jennifer Jason Leigh with Elizabeth Shue for some reason, and that's just me being stupid.
It's destroying everything.
It's not destroying. It's making something new.
Hereditary 2018.
Come on, Peter. There's your suit.
This movie does not fuck around. I thought I knew what this movie was, having watched multiple videos, listening to podcasts about it, and even the trailer seemed rather straightforward. I would even have the ability to bullshit my way through conversations that people are like, oh, you know the scene I'm talking about. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can now tell when people are faking when they're saying, oh yeah, I've seen Hereditary. If you're like, oh yeah, I've seen it. No, you haven't. There's that. It's kind of like seeing Mother and going, that baby scene. That's what Hereditary does to you. So as I stated, that scene hit. That 15 minutes of holy shit. And all I could say is this movie goes hard. I've heard people trying to use this as a date night movie, and I can't even imagine the existential dread that must have seeped in between the two as they came out of it. To be honest, that's why there would be bad reviews, because this movie rolls up, promoting itself as a family dealing with the matriarch dying and the weird girl that, well, something's just not quite right with her. Instead, we get a much more honest horror movie that delves into the darkest corners of familial dysfunction. This is a worthy successor to horror masterworks such as Rosemary's Baby and even Poltergeist. All this from a first-time director, too. At the end of the day, this movie was the only real movie that affected me on an emotional level, stripping me raw as it shoved that knife in deeper and deeper with each scene. Now, that being said, I did run into issues with the last 15 minutes. Once again, this seems to be a recurring theme with me. Everything before that was perfect. I was on good terms with it, loved it, but during that last act, there's a level of ridiculousness that made me lose that pivotal scare factor that had been gripping me throughout the whole film up to that point. Even now, I can take a step back from what I saw and recognize that the ideas in themselves were scary, but that the film just wasn't. Honestly, I'm just not really sure what can be done to save that section, but regardless, I would still highly recommend this movie.
I just don't want to put any more stress on my family.
Halloween 2018.
I've waited for him.
It's funny talking with Nate One Neutron about this movie because for him, David Gordon Green is a well-respected indie drama director, whereas I know him from comedies such as Pineapple Express. Add to that, we all know about all the multiple timelines intersecting the Halloween franchise from all of its sequels, where they've cut stuff off before and added things back in, and that just kind of further complicated the explanation to a casual viewer, especially if I'm trying to pitch it to somebody. Now, for Nate, there was no question that this film would be good. I wasn't so sure, but I am so glad that I was proven wrong. This is a strong entry in the series, only marred by some odd comedy bits that sometimes feel out of place. For me, the ending felt like that lead into another act, but all of a sudden it was over with, and without the denouement I was so eagerly craving, it just kind of fell flat for me. But everything else was just pitch perfect. You know, now that I think about it, that's starting to be a recurring trend this year. If you were wondering if there's going to be a sequel, well, the credits end in a way that leaves it open to the inevitable sequel. All I can say is, bring it on.
Can you close the closet door?
Memoir of a Murderer, 2017.
내 머리는 기억을 잃어가고 있지만 내 손은 기억한다 습관처럼 살인을.
So, I tripped over this one because apparently I don't know how to read or write. Really makes you wonder how I managed to get a book out, huh? I found this on Netflix and was so excited because I've been trying to get a hold of Memories of Murder since Every Frame of Painting covered them. You may have noticed this is an issue already, so I jumped headlong into Memoir of a Murderer. It took me until I was about 2/3 into the film to realize I was watching the wrong Korean drama about a serial killer. All in all, this is a riveting film where the serial killer has dementia and he's trying to prove the man who's dating his daughter is also a serial killer. What proves equally infuriating and suspenseful in this movie is that he floats in and out of lucidity, completely forgetting his mission when it matters most. Regardless of how I stumbled into this film, I absolutely loved it, along with its interspersed mysteries and heartbreaking conclusion. Definitely give this one a look.
내 머리가 죽어.
기억나기 왜?
3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, 2017.
What's the law on what you can and cannot say on a billboard? I assume you can't say nothing defamatory and you can't say fuck, piss, or cunt. That right?
Or anus?
I think I'll be all right then.
I guess you're Angela Hayes' mother.
That's right. I'm Angela Hayes' mother.
This movie was a goddamn revelation that I saw just a few days into 2018, making it miss its debut year. As I said, I'm a man of principle, as stupid as that principle may be. 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri walks a damn near mystical tightrope between biting drama and outrageous hilarity. Meanwhile, it also takes broad swipes and lands them with expert precision. One of my favorite scenes is during the interrogation between Willoughby, Mildred, and Dixon. Mildred is saying the most awful shit to the sheriff only for him to accidentally cough up blood on her face, and it immediately flips from screaming laughter to holy shit in a blink of an eye, revealing both their characters in an instant that most 2-hour movies never achieve. It's not perfect. Specifically, Abby Cornish's accent is so out of left field that I'm not sure she knew what movie she was in or what part of the country. However, anything with Caleb Landry Jones instantly makes it better. And this movie also introduced me to Samara Weaving, which I mentioned on the last list. She's the ditzy but ultimately good-natured Penelope, the woman Mildred's husband left her for. Her comedic timing was to die for, and I loved her so much as this eager little puppy that her comedic timing was to die for. And I loved how much like an eager puppy she was, completely oblivious to the seething hatred between Mildred and her former husband.
This reporter, for one, hopes this finally puts an end to the strange saga of the 3 Billboards Outside.
This doesn't put an end to shit, you fucking retard. This is just a fucking start. Why don't you put that on your Good Morning Missouri fucking wake-up broadcast, bitch?
Beyond the Black Rainbow, 2010.
Hello. My name is Dr. Mercurio Arborea, and I am the founder of the Arborea Institute. Through our unique blend of benign pharmacology, sensory therapy, and energy sculpting, we can guide you to a new, better, happier you.
This is one of those films that I've had in my library for years, but kept putting it off because it looked like a foreign film from the late 1960s. I wasn't quite sure what it was, but I just knew that there was a great story there that I just had to sit down and enjoy. It was just a matter of finding the time. I was wrong on just about every account but that last one. Beyond the Black Rainbow starts with a very late 60s style advertisement for the Arborea Institute, before it jumps forward to the 80s equivalent universe where the Institute is all but deserted beyond its single patient along with a Christian Bale lookalike curator. He has more than just a platonic obsession with his lone female patient, as is discovered by his assistant, but all that being said, the story is more about the sensory experience rather than the logical one. Panos Cosmatos' father was the director of Tombstone, so the residual checks are what helped fund this acid trip of a movie that eschews characters for gorgeous visuals and weird creations. Its most visually arresting scene involves a character taking a shit ton of hallucinogenics and submersing themselves in what looks like a vat of oil, and the ensuing insanity that follows. Sounds like a good Saturday night. Panos' follow-up film, Mandy, also came out this year, but this one tries to play more with characters along with the acid trip of a movie concept. It definitely succeeds more so than his first film, but still fails on many fronts. However, I do like the bad acid trip biker gang from hell that came out of these ideas. It's so clearly obvious that they were inspired by the Hellraiser Cenobites that there's no way I couldn't love them. There's some unforgettable scenes in Mandy, but I latched onto Beyond the Black Rainbow so hard. See both if you can, but if not, just enjoy the first and then follow it with Nick Spears' dissection.
Very good. That's very, very good. You know, this is always the highlight of my day.
We Were Never Really Here, 2018.
Close your eyes.
The first thing I hear from everyone when it comes to this movie is, this is the latest film from Lynn Ramsey. However, that means nothing to me. I'm woefully underqualified to talk about her films. However, I can say that You Were Never Really Here is an awe-inspiring journey into the life of this fundamentally damaged assassin. We flash between his current world and the main traumatizing event centering around his mother and his abusive father. Joe is hired to find the 13-year-old daughter of a New York senator. However, just as he is about to pass off the girl, things turn bloody and he must embark on another journey into his madness as he attempts to save this girl and take down the organization who is exploiting them. Now, I make it sound more like a commonplace revenge movie, but in all honesty, it's an emotionally wrecking experience that constantly keeps you on your toes and keeps you frantically trying to keep up. Cinefix recently had a great breakdown on how the film subverts your expectations when it comes to the cathartic violence, and when that's stripped from even the main character on a blind quest for vengeance, how it destroys that person. Along with some disturbing subtext that might as well be text, You Were Never Really Here is a masterpiece not to be missed.
Don't worry. We'll get her.
It's okay, Joe. It's okay.
Before I get to my last item, I wanted to talk about my most surprising item, as well as, well, my most what the fuck piece of entertainment that I'm still trying to get my head around. First up, this documentary series came out of nowhere for me. It was even more shocking that just a couple weeks before, one of my favorite YouTube channels, Down the Rabbit Hole, managed to cover this religious organization in great detail despite their channel normally just launching into internet oddities rather than real world. I'm of course talking about the Rajneeshpuram cult covered in Netflix's Wild Wild Country, 2018.
Everybody felt they were there at the beginning of the great experiment. Like we were the chosen people.
It's a fascinating look at a religious organization that tried to incorporate itself in a small Oregon town, only to run into massive hurdles, physical violence, and cultural attacks against them. The story gets even weirder when, in a Netflix series, they talk with surviving members of both the town and the organization, hearing how dead set each side was against the other. The Down the Rabbit Hole 40-minute episode was a huge help in getting me to understand the intricacies, but I will admit that I've bounced between the two pieces of media to help understand the oddities and recognize the characters between the two. After I finished Wild Wild Country, I went back to Frederick Knudsen's episode to help supplement the admittedly more in-depth series. I was immediately struck by, despite Frederick's level tone and to-the-point exploration of the topic, how biased he was against the Rajneesh. Where Wild Wild Country does its best to represent both sides, Frederick leaves out things that definitely paint the Bhagwan in a more negative light. However, Down the Rabbit Hole did feature a sizable chunk about how the ashram and Osho had issues with the Indian government before they even tried to come over to America. These issues were conspicuously absent from Wild Wild Country, so once again I say that these two really build on each other, giving a more full understanding of the issue and allow you to call out the issues with both productions. Neither one is perfect, but both are accentuated by the other. One of the things that caught me so completely off guard about this series is that each side is so completely sure that they were right. There's little to no reflection on the situation when one party thinks, what the fuck? Actually, to be fair, there is one of Sheila's inner circle that does have that realization, but every other main player from the organization to the residents of Antelope are so dead set in their convictions that there's no other way it could have played out. It's just weird to think that there are thousands of people holed up in a city they created through political force against the wishes of the local townspeople, and, well, it's been forgotten by history. To think all this came about because they did come peacefully and not through mass suicides as many suspected and feared. Now that's been covered so thoroughly, here's hoping that we'll never forget again.
There's darkness in all of us. Doesn't make you a bad person.
So here's my final entry before we reveal the last of our year-end list. The question that racks my brain every time I think about it. How do I feel about this? And what the fuck was Director's Cut 2018?
Give me money, and I'll be such a fucking bad guy. You'll remember that I'm really a fucking nice guy in the real world. Come on, please. Help me be a bad guy. Did you miss me?
Now, I know what it was in the literal sense. I even helped fund it through Fund Anything. On paper, Director's Cut is a metafictional movie about a Seven-style Kickstarter film starring Missy Pyle. One of its backers, Herbert Blount, is an awkward blowhard who is obsessed with Missy Pyle. But he also abducts the real-life Missy Pyle to recreate scenes with him in it and use rudimentary After Effects clips to compile his perfect film. Throughout the film, we are treated to Herbert's voice over a commentary track, as he tells us about the insider terminology and how certain scenes came together in character in both the fictional movie as well as behind-the-scenes clips, even including visits from the police and how he plans to outsmart them. It's fucking insane. And I loved most of it. I think my biggest letdown, however, was how comedic it was. The original pitch trailer, before they had a lead actress, was for a dark and twisted experimental film, where Penn Jillette transformed himself into this deranged Herbert Blount. Instead, the film shows Blount as an over-enthusiastic film fanatic who knows a bunch about the ideas behind movies, but can only produce the room-quality schlock. This all comes from the extended production, the search for the right actress, and the rewrites for each potential actress that could join the production. Don't get me wrong, there are things I absolutely love about this film, and Missy Pyle is a great choice, even if at times there isn't much she gets to do. Director's Cut is definitely worth a look, as well as Adam Rifkin's previous endeavor that inspired it, Look. If you haven't even heard of Look, all I'll say is that it's a character drama told explicitly through security cam footage, and it's devastating. If you watch nothing else from that list, I'd recommend tracking down Look.
Missy, the martini shot is up! Just read the lines right off the cue cards, okay?
You were very attractive.
I work in movies, so I have a good idea how evil works. We're a great team. I take filmmaking very seriously. It's my calling. It's like they're hunting humans!
We made it. I've got one last recommendation. A movie that came out almost 3 decades ago, but blew me away for a range of reasons. If, like me, all you've heard of this next film is from best scare lists, seek this one out. It's worth every minute devoted to it. Our final recommendation, The Exorcist III, Legion, 1990.
Death be not proud, nor canst thou kill me. Satan grows stronger.
You believe in possession, Father?
He has found a haven.
Come to take a little blood from you, Father.
He has taken possession.
The boy had been crucified.
Like, wow. All I ever heard about this freaking movie is the long take with the nun. Why does no one ever talk about Brad Dourif's amazing performance? The movie was so much fun, as well as interesting when juxtaposed with another film I saw this year, Mr. Frost. Funnily enough, both films were released in 1990 and feature similar premises. Both feature a psychopath who claims that they are an evil entity affecting the world both inside and outside the asylum, leading to a final confrontation that destroys the worlds of their respective leads. Perhaps the most interesting thing to me is that the ending between the two, the ending of Mr. Frost, where the protagonist ends up shooting the devil as their climax, is exactly what they had planned to do with The Exorcist III. However, they realized that there were people coming to an Exorcist movie who would want to see a titular exorcism, so they modified the last act to include a hasty exorcism that is just as quickly tossed aside to finish the story quickly and efficiently.
Oh, gracious me. Was I raving? Please forgive me. I'm mad.
What I love so much about the insanity of Exorcist III is that they managed to get the original Father Karras as Patient X. George C. Scott plays this tough-as-nails detective that saw the priest die at the end of the original Exorcist. There's a nice interplay between the two of them before Brad Dourif's Gemini killer takes over, and the scenes between the two actors just go off the rails so deliciously. Even more so, there's an alternate cut of the movie release called Legion. That is what the director originally wanted, and it pulls out all of Father Karras' scenes and just sticks with Brad Dourif's performance throughout. They still play it as if Brad Dourif is Father Karras, and they get rid of all the voice modulation to make it a more real performance. But it was also not supposed to be a horror film. So far, all I've seen is the original, but I was so wowed that I picked up the collector's edition with both versions. So while I did enjoy the suspense of the long hallway scene, nothing could have prepared me for seeing George C. Scott in this and Brad Dourif's excellent performance. At the end of the day, I would just say that it reminds me of Season of the Witch more than anything else. So if that speaks to you, then this is the movie for you.
This time you're going to lose. The real terror is back. George C. Scott in William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist III.
And that's it. I know my choices aren't necessarily normal, but I'd much rather talk about the films that got me excited rather than just force everything into a static little box. That all being said, we're back and in color, and we need your support to make this a full-time gig for us. The best place to support us is at Patreon. Even a $1 pledge per video can completely turn our lives around. Each dollar goes to improving the channel and buying better equipment. We recently used what we got so far to pay for new microphone recorders and a mic setup. In the past, it's gone to a new lighting setup, a green screen, and cameras to help us bring you this updated version of Dubious Consumption. As always, you can find me at Justin D. Hurd. Be sure to check out the Dubious Consumers Podcast Volume 2 for updates on where we are in our videos as well as weekly recommendations. We're always open to change, so if you have any ideas or comments, please tweet them at Justin D. Hurd. While we're on track to hit 1,000 subscribers so we can be monetized again, Patreon is the best way to support your smaller creators. There are a variety of rewards ranging from getting your name in every video to being able to dictate our future content. Be sure to set fire to the hive by mashing the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Make sure to hit that bell and spread the word. And thanks for all you do. Here's to the years ahead. My name is Justin D. Hurd, and this has been Dubious Consumption, and I'm outro.